Welcome to TT-Buddhism, a space where we share timeless Buddhist wisdom through stories, teachings, and reflections to help you live more mindfully, peacefully, and compassionately in today's chaotic world. In times of division, anxiety, and uncertainty, one man has stood as a symbol of peace. Not with weapons, power, or politics, but with compassion, clarity, and unwavering presence. Born in a small village high in the mountains of Tibet, he became not just a spiritual leader, but a global icon of hope and mindfulness. That man is His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, a humble monk whose life journey has reshaped the way the world sees Buddhism. Through his teachings and actions, he has brought ancient Tibetan wisdom into the heart of modern life, showing that kindness and wisdom transcend culture, religion, and nationality. In today's video, we'll explore the remarkable life of the 14th Dalai Lama. From being recognized as a reincarnated leader as a child, to becoming a Nobel Peace Prize laureate and a spiritual voice for millions across the globe. And above all, we'll dive deep into why many believe that Buddhism will never be the same again after his influence. If something in you feels drawn to this story, stay with us until the end. We promise this is more than a history lesson. It's a reflection on what it truly means to live with compassion, courage, and purpose. 2. From a Tibetan child to a spiritual leader. The story of the 14th Dalai Lama begins in the quiet village of Taktser in northeastern Tibet. In 1935, a boy named Lamo Tondup was born to a humble farming family. No one could have imagined that this child would one day become one of the most influential spiritual figures of the modern world. According to Tibetan Buddhist tradition, the Dalai Lama is not chosen through elections or inheritance. Instead, he is believed to be the reincarnation of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, who returns lifetime after lifetime to guide sentient beings toward enlightenment. After the passing of the 13th Dalai Lama in 1933, senior monks and officials began the search for his reincarnation, guided by visions, signs, and spiritual rituals. When the search party arrived at young Lamo Tondup's home, they presented him with several objects. Some belonged to the previous Dalai Lama, others were ordinary replicas. The boy instinctively selected the correct items, saying, "This is mine." It was a powerful sign. At just 2 years old, he was recognized as the 14th Dalai Lama. At the age of 5, he was taken to the Tibetan capital of Lhasa and formally enthroned. He received the name Tenzin Gyatso and began an intensive education in Buddhist philosophy, Tibetan literature, logic, Sanskrit, and meditation. While most children were learning to walk and talk, he was memorizing sacred texts and contemplating the nature of emptiness. But his role wasn't only spiritual. The Dalai Lama has historically held both spiritual and political authority over Tibet. Even in his early years, young Tenzin was groomed for a future of responsibility, not just as a monk, but as a leader of a people and protector of a culture. It was a path marked by discipline, wisdom, and great expectations. Little did the world know that this boy, raised in the serenity of Tibetan monasteries, would one day speak before global leaders, inspire millions across continents, and change the course of Buddhism forever. 3. From exile to the globalization of Buddhism. In 1959, when the Dalai Lama was just 23 years old, the peaceful mountain kingdom of Tibet was in turmoil. Under growing pressure from Chinese forces, tensions had reached a boiling point. Fearing for his life and the future of his people, the Dalai Lama made a daring escape. Disguised as a soldier, he fled Lhasa under the cover of night and began a harrowing 14-day journey across the Himalayas. When he arrived in India, the Indian government granted him asylum. In the quiet hill town of Dharamshala, he established the Tibetan government in exile, which became the new heart of Tibetan identity and spirituality. But this exile was not the end. It was the beginning of a powerful transformation, not only for the Dalai Lama, but for Buddhism itself. Tens of thousands of Tibetan refugees followed him, forming a strong and resilient diaspora. Tibetan monasteries, schools, and cultural institutions were rebuilt on foreign soil. In exile, the Dalai Lama began to reach a much broader audience, beyond the mountains of Tibet, across the continents of the modern world. He traveled widely, speaking at the United Nations, the U.S. Congress, universities, spiritual centers, and scientific conferences. His message was always the same: nonviolence, compassion, and the preservation of culture through peace. In 1989, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, not only for his tireless work for Tibet, but for his commitment to peaceful solutions in a violent world. Through this global journey, the Dalai Lama turned tragedy into opportunity. Instead of allowing exile to silence Tibetan Buddhism, he used it as a bridge, connecting East and West, tradition and modernity. His presence brought Tibetan philosophy, meditation practices, and ethical teachings to millions who had never heard of them before. Today, thanks to his courage and leadership, Tibetan Buddhism is no longer confined to the Himalayan plateau. It thrives in temples across Europe, America, and Asia. More importantly, its core teachings on compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom have found new meaning in the hearts of people everywhere, regardless of religion or background. 4. Reforming and modernizing Buddhism for the world. As the Dalai Lama stepped onto the global stage, he was faced with a challenge few traditional leaders have ever attempted: how to make ancient Buddhist wisdom relevant in the modern world. But instead of preserving Buddhism in a sealed container of tradition, he opened its doors to science, ethics, and everyday life. One of the most revolutionary aspects of his leadership was his openness to scientific inquiry. Rather than seeing science as a threat, he embraced it as a partner. In fact, he once said, "If scientific analysis were to conclusively demonstrate certain claims in Buddhism to be false, then we must accept the findings of science and abandon those claims." This powerful statement broke centuries of dogmatic thinking. It positioned Buddhism not as a rigid belief system, but as an evolving method of inquiry, one that could adapt, grow, and respond to new knowledge. He invited neuroscientists to study Tibetan monks in meditation, helping to spark the modern mindfulness movement, now practiced in schools, hospitals, and even corporate offices around the world. But his innovation didn't stop there. He spoke of compassion not as a religious commandment, but as a human value essential for peace and happiness. His teachings on mindfulness were stripped of cultural complexity and made accessible to anyone, anywhere, regardless of their faith. The Dalai Lama also fostered interfaith dialogue, seeking common ground between Buddhism and Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Judaism. He often said, "There are many spiritual paths, but they all lead to the same goal: inner peace." By using universal language, he bridged the gap between East and West. He showed that meditation, ethics, and compassion are not just for monks or spiritual seekers. They're for anyone who wants to live with clarity, peace, and heart. This modern, inclusive, and practical approach didn't dilute Buddhism. It gave it new life, allowing it to thrive beyond monasteries, reaching living rooms, classrooms, and communities across the globe. 5. Uniting Buddhist traditions across the world. For centuries, Buddhism existed in various forms across Asia. Theravada in Southeast Asia, Mahayana in East Asia, and Vajrayana in Tibet, each with its own philosophies, practices, and interpretations. While these traditions shared core values, they often operated independently, sometimes even in isolation from one another. But the Dalai Lama saw something deeper. Beneath all differences lay the same heartbeat of wisdom and compassion. And he knew that to face modern global challenges, conflict, suffering, and spiritual confusion, Buddhism had to come together. So, in a bold and unprecedented move, he began fostering unity among Buddhist schools. He convened and participated in international Buddhist conferences, bringing together leaders from Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana traditions. These meetings weren't just ceremonial. They were spaces of real dialogue, shared learning, and mutual respect. The Dalai Lama often emphasized that diversity within Buddhism is not a weakness, but a strength. People have different needs and temperaments, so multiple paths are not only natural, they are necessary. His leadership encouraged Buddhists to learn from one another, to collaborate in humanitarian work, education, and environmental protection, and to stand together on global issues. One of his lasting impacts is the rise of engaged Buddhism, a movement inspired by his call to turn inner transformation into compassionate action. Today, Buddhist groups from different traditions work side by side in disaster relief, prison meditation programs, interfaith dialogue, and climate activism. This new spirit of cooperation wasn't about blending traditions into one. It was about honoring the richness of each path while recognizing a shared commitment to awakening and service. In a world often divided by doctrine, culture, and ideology, the Dalai Lama reminded us that the essence of Buddhism is not found in labels. It is found in living with kindness, wisdom, and humility. Through his efforts, a new era of Buddhist unity began, one rooted not in uniformity, but in deep mutual understanding. 6. Perspectives from other Buddhist traditions. While the Dalai Lama is a towering figure in global Buddhism, it's important to remember that he represents one school, Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism. But what do other Buddhist traditions think about his influence? The answer reveals both deep respect and thoughtful distinction. In Theravada Buddhism, dominant in countries like Thailand, Sri Lanka, and Myanmar, the Dalai Lama is widely admired. A respected Theravada monk once said, "We honor him as a great teacher. His focus on compassion and mindfulness resonates deeply with our tradition." However, he also noted that some tantric practices central to Tibetan Buddhism are not part of the Theravada path, which emphasizes early Buddhist scriptures, monastic discipline, and insight through vipassana meditation. From the Zen Chan tradition, popular in East Asia and increasingly in the West, the response is similarly appreciative. One Zen master commented, "The Dalai Lama's openness to science and his ability to communicate Buddhist ideas to a modern audience benefit all traditions. But our methods, especially in meditation and the pursuit of enlightenment, differ in key ways." Zen's minimalist, direct approach contrasts with Tibetan Buddhism's rich symbolism and ritual. Pure Land Buddhism, especially influential in China and Japan, offers yet another view. A Pure Land scholar said, "His teachings on compassion align with our values. His global influence has opened many doors. Yet, our focus remains on faith in Amitabha Buddha, not necessarily on the meditation-heavy path of Vajrayana." What's striking is not the differences, it's the mutual respect. The Dalai Lama himself has always embraced this diversity. He often reminds people, "I speak mainly for Tibetan Buddhism, but Buddhism has many valuable paths. people should follow what suits their nature best. This humility and inclusivity are rare. Instead of promoting uniformity, the Dalai Lama encourages open-hearted exploration. His presence has helped elevate the voices of all Buddhist schools, creating space for dialogue, mutual learning, and shared action on issues like peace, ethics, and environmental care. In a world that often seeks to divide, the Dalai Lama's approach reminds us we can be different, yet still deeply connected, especially when guided by compassion and wisdom. 7. Challenges ahead and reflections on the future. Even with his global recognition and spiritual influence, the Dalai Lama's path has not been without challenges. And the road ahead presents even deeper questions for Tibetan Buddhism and the Buddhist world at large. One of the most pressing issues is the question of succession. The Dalai Lama has publicly stated that he may be the last in the lineage, or that his successor could be chosen through a new, non-traditional process. The institution of the Dalai Lama has served its purpose. Perhaps it is better that it ends with a popular Dalai Lama, he once said. This statement sparked intense debate, both within the Tibetan community and beyond. For many, the Dalai Lama is not just a leader, he is a symbol of identity, continuity, and hope. Complicating matters is the political interference from the Chinese government, which claims authority to approve the next Dalai Lama. This sets the stage for a possible future where two competing successors emerge, one chosen by Tibetan spiritual leaders and another by political forces. Such a split could deepen divisions and cause uncertainty for millions of followers. Beyond succession, there's the broader challenge of how Tibetan Buddhism will maintain its authenticity while continuing to adapt to a fast-changing world. In the age of digital distraction, AI, and rapid cultural shifts, can ancient wisdom still speak to the human heart? The Dalai Lama's example says yes, but only if Buddhism remains grounded in core values, compassion, awareness, and ethical action. There's also the need for new spiritual leaders to rise, those who embody the same clarity, humility, and courage. Leaders who can engage with science, dialogue with other faiths, and guide people toward inner peace in an age of anxiety. In the face of these challenges, one truth remains clear. The Dalai Lama's influence has planted seeds that will continue to grow if we, the next generation, choose to water them with mindfulness, courage, and love. 8. Final message and lessons for us all. As we reflect on the extraordinary life and teachings of the 14th Dalai Lama, we're reminded that this story isn't just about one man. It's about all of us. His journey, from a small Tibetan village to the heart of the global stage, is a testament to what compassion, mindfulness, and resilience can truly achieve. So what can we take away from his life? First, the Dalai Lama teaches us that compassion is not a weakness. It is our greatest strength. In a world filled with anger and division, responding with kindness requires deep inner courage. He reminds us that when we care for others, we also heal ourselves. Second, he shows us the power of mindfulness in daily life. Whether you're a monk or a student, a parent or a worker, taking time to be present, to truly observe your thoughts, emotions, and actions, can lead to greater peace and clarity. As he often says, be kind whenever possible. It is always possible. Third, the Dalai Lama exemplifies spiritual leadership through humility. He calls himself a simple monk, even as he addresses world leaders and speaks to millions. His life reminds us that true influence comes not from ego, but from integrity and intention. In a time of noise, he speaks with stillness. In a time of conflict, he offers peace. and in a time of confusion, he offers clarity. These are not just Buddhist teachings. They are universal human truths. You don't need to become a monk to walk this path. You only need to take one small step. Offer kindness today. Take a moment to breathe, listen without judgment, or choose patience over reaction. These are the seeds of transformation. The Dalai Lama's life is proof that ancient wisdom still matters, and that we too can be part of something meaningful and lasting. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life and legacy of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. At TT-Buddhism, our mission is to bring you not just stories, but wisdom that can truly transform the way we live. Moment by moment, breath. The Dalai Lama's message reminds us that peace is possible, not as an abstract ideal, but as a practice we can bring into our homes, relationships, and communities. His life teaches us that even in exile, even in suffering, we can rise, serve, and inspire. We'd love to hear from you. What lesson from the Dalai Lama's journey touched your heart the most? How do you apply compassion or mindfulness in your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every message with gratitude. If this video inspired you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who may need a little more peace in their life today. Your support helps us continue creating meaningful content rooted in Buddhist wisdom. Until next time, stay present, stay compassionate, and stay connected to the light within you. Namaste.